This is the Ace Founder Podcast.
Welcome to the show, Derek. It's an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Avi. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming on. And we're going to be talking more cybersecurity in this episode. I've totally been enjoying. I've interviewed a couple of cyber experts, at least 4 or 5 of them, and each one has brought a different angle. Because what I'm learning, cybersecurity is quite broad. It's a very broad spectrum, and I had somebody talk about governance the other day. I didn't know what that was, but he came and clarified what that was. And obviously, you are tackling an aspect of cyber as well, and we're going to be diving deep into that. But as always, and I like to say always, I just like to let my guests introduce themselves, because if you're going to do a way better job at it than I do. So can you tell us a little bit more about you and about the work you do?
Yeah, I'm Derek Hardmon, and I'm the founder of Secure Technology Consultants based out of Atlanta. I've spent more than 20 years in IT and information security, mostly in banking, governance, healthcare, and other regulated areas. And today I focus mostly on small and medium businesses, trying to make sure that their cybersecurity posture is that on the level, or at least close to that of a larger enterprise, larger businesses.
Very, very cool and very helpful, because I think with, which I'd love to get your opinion later on, with the advent of AI, I think more smaller businesses are going to start taking cybersecurity seriously, and they're having solutions geared for small businesses, and it's always a welcome thing in my opinion. But yeah, all right then. Could you? I always like to know as well. How did how did you come up with the name of your business? What's the story behind that?
Secure Technology Consultants. I wanted something that was simple and direct, something that it's very easy to remember and stays on point with the mission, right? So we are a cybersecurity consulting firm that works with technology and just trying to make sure that business owners understand risk and understand gaps and know what to do to try to help mitigate some of that.
Yeah, I love the name. It's very, it's very straight to the point. Sometimes those are better. Sales meetings must be very clear with you.
Right.
We are secure.
I
Really,
put
really
a group
cool.
out to check and see what was best or anything like that. Just straight to the point.
Straight to the point. I love it. All right, when it comes to building real cyber security and compliance programs, I mean, what does that mean, and what should the founder know about that?
Yeah, I want to say probably the biggest thing first would be understanding what the assets are, right? So you want to do a certain level of scoping, and what scoping is you are identifying your assets. What are our assets? Who has access to those assets? What happens to our business if something were to happen to those assets, right? And also, there are some, if you're starting up your cybersecurity program, you're probably 5 things that you probably need to pay attention to first, right? You want to identify your assets. That's true. You want to pay attention to who has access to what. So your identity security is important, right? Where there's an opportunity to have multi-factor authentication in place, you want to do that. You want to have some form of endpoint protection in place, and along with that, reliable backup. And lastly, the 5th thing I would say is employee training, right? Because your employees are going to be, the custodians of your business, right? So they're going to be the ones that are really going to be in charge of kind of protecting your information.
Very, very interesting. And that is so true, because especially if you have like multiple employees going in and out of the business, that I can imagine how leaks and gaps could appear out of this. Like, do you find it challenging then securing businesses? Is that something that you find difficult or tricky
I think
to
I
tackle?
think if owners or executive leadership understand, and I think most of the times they do, right? They're understanding that the information that they have been charged with needs to be protected, right? But
Mm,
also, not only are these tools necessary, whether it's identity, multi-factor, endpoint protection, backup, employee training, this also has to be driven from policy, right? So at some point, when you identify all these things that need to be in place, that you're looking at it from a technology standpoint, right? But cybersecurity needs to be looked at also from a business aspect.
mm,
So and what's going to drive that would be policy, right? So once you've done the technology side of things, or at least started that process, policy needs to jump in there, and now you're trying to create an environment, right? Because that's what's really going to drive your program. It has to be policy driven, and that has to take place from the top down, not bottom up. Um,
that makes a lot of sense because if the top level is not particularly concerned about that, then the bottom will not be as well, and then there goes your company. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where do you typically tend to find, not in terms of finding clients, but at what point in the cyber sphere or in the protection spectrum do you tend to find small businesses? Are they like aware of it, secure, or what does that look like for in a typical client for you?
that's a good question, because that's going to vary a lot about ownership, right?
Okay.
So you could have an owner that understands the importance of it, but just may not understand that there are resources available, right? So if we were
Mm,
speaking, some time ago, there weren't as many tools out there available for these small and medium businesses um, that would, make sure that their security program was at least, in line with regulatory needs. But those tools are out there now, right? So,
mm,
so you may have a misunderstanding there, where they might feel like they can afford cybersecurity, right? Or can't
mm,
afford a mature information security program, when in actuality they probably can't afford a breach, right? That's going to be uh, definitely something that you want to avoid at all costs, right? And the reality of it is, a cybersecurity program is going to be a lot cheaper if you are proactively putting it in place step by step,
mm,
recognizing your assets and where your risks lie, and being very methodical about setting your program up, as opposed to you reacting after an incident, right? Because then you're kind of chasing it at that point, and that in itself is can be very costly. Uh, so
mm.
the idea that you may not be able to afford it, that's not true. The probably the other challenge would be a small organization that probably can afford it, but don't necessarily understand the importance of it. So for me,
Mm,
that's kind of been the two challenges. Uh, One, where
mm,
they feel they can afford it. Two, they can afford it, but don't really see the importance of it, because the idea of security through obscurity, right? So why would someone hit me? My business is not that big. But you
ah,
can't think of it that way. You may not have the same amount it may not have the same number of accounts, or but you still have the same sensitive information, right? So whereas this
mm,
organization may have 5,000 accounts and you have 100, that's still the same sensitive information, correct? And today, a lot of this is automated. A lot of hacker information is being automated. So it's the bots are just checking, right? Trying to check to see what's open, right? I think the idea, which you're checking doors until you find one that's not locked.
hmm. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And that's a very good analogy you use there in terms of checking. And they're always checking. Like, it's not, they're never going to stop. Like, and the moment they find I see. Well, in terms of checking, though, what does that look like? Is it like, let's just say like a small agency, 20 employees? Are they like checking their servers, or what
Yeah,
does that
you
look
could be
like?
checking a
Yeah.
number of things, right? You could be,
Okay.
you could be pinging the routers or firewalls, trying to
Hmm.
see if that has been hardened and they're using best practice when it comes to configuration on that end. But
Hmm.
again, you still have the human element, right? So,
Hmm.
the probably one of the most used ways would be, through email, right? If you haven't trained your employees that, they probably didn't win this money or this prize, and all they have to do is click here. Uh, that's probably not legit, right? And so that kind of training needs to take place as well. There's several ways to get on the inside, and that's the whole purpose, is to try to get on the inside, right? And then also, not to get too technical, but just because a company, a small business is targeted, it may not be the ultimate target, because businesses have relationships, right? So for
Hmm.
example, I worked at a small bank, and we would get targeted a lot, right? One, because it's a bank, but two, our core provider, which I won't name, but they had hundreds of banks, right? So
Hmm.
really, the target was probably the core provider, not us,
I see.
right?
I
I
see.
know we've all seen those old movies, or probably recent movies, where the bank robbers don't try to break in the bank; they break in the laundromat next to the bank, right? Because they probably don't have the security that the bank has. If I can get in the laundromat, then maybe the bank doesn't have a whole perimeter secure, just the front. You know what I mean, and the back. So that's kind of the thinking behind
Such a good way to look at it, like, because, and these guys are flipping clever. They're always trying new ways to crack in and get
it.
into you.
Right.
So you're right. Like, if they can get you through a smaller company, there you go. There's lots of business for you. Because if I would assume if you're a service provider to a big bank and you got hacked and something, I would assume that would be lots of a contract for you there, or worse even.
Right, right. Well, again, you can put a dollar amount on certain things, right? So
Yeah.
we mentioned naming assets, and we can say if we lost this particular thing, that's 20,000, right?
Mm,
So is that important enough for us to cover it? Yes, it is. Okay, so we cover it.
mm,
But there's no cost you can put on the reputational risk behind some of this, right? Because that $20,000 asset got compromised, and you have all these customers, and they just heard about it, right? That runoff is going to be way more than 20,000, right? And so there's a reputational risk there also that everyone needs to consider.
really, really cool. I am also curious, like, when you work with clients now, do you have like a process you put them through to figure out what they need or what they don't need, or is there how does that work with you?
Yeah, yeah. So you definitely want to interview your potential customer, potential client. You want to understand their first and foremost. You want to understand their business model, right?
Mm,
So you want to understand what it is that they do, and you want to talk to. Obviously, you want to talk to leadership, but you also at some point want to talk to the people that are actually doing the work, right? A lot of times you may speak with the CEO or CFO, and you ask them, so how's this? Do you have this secured, or what kind of technology do you have surrounding this asset right here? Because those people can name the assets, right? They know where the value is in their company, but they may not necessarily know what's protecting it, if anything,
mm,
right? So you're starting out just understanding their business, scoping the company and the assets, and then from there, we talked about those five things. You want to ask, do they have any of those things in place? Do they have any policies in place? What does a day-to-day operations look like for that business? Uh, and then, based off of that, then you can start making some recommendations and best practices for that industry from a compliance standpoint, governance standpoint, um, and just drill down from there. It's not going to be a situation where you can um, use the same kind of interview process that you had. You can use the same process, but based off of the information that you gather, it's going to be customized to that particular client.
Very interesting. And kind of related then, how can the founder build that real cybersecurity and compliance programs? Say they don't have it already in place. So what I think some things that they could do to build that for their company.
Right. Again, what you want to do first is you want to identify your assets. Right?
Okay.
That is, and that's your question, correct? You want
Yes.
to know
Yeah.
how would you start that process? Yeah,
Yes.
you want to identify your assets, and maybe even before then, just identify what technology you already have in place. Right? What do you have in place already? Um, do you have any policy or procedures in place already? Identify what you already have, and then from there, identify your assets. Identify who has access to what kind of access do they
Hmm.
have, where do these assets lie, where do they reside, uh, what happens to your business if something happens to that, what happens to your business if some the people who have access to these things leave or go on
Hmm.
vacation or any of those things, leave this disgruntled, what happens, right? Um, and so you want to, again, just on a very basic level, those five things we talked about: identity, security, backup, multi-factor authentication, employee education, those kind of things on a very basic level. But then after you've identified that, again, you will need to discuss policies and procedures, right? Because that's going to be what's driving uh, your security program. And think about it. If you can have all these documents that an auditor can come in or examiner can come in and look at, right? But if you don't have any of these practices in place, then it's like they don't exist almost, right? And that's the day that we live in now. Is that it's not good enough for you to just have these in place. You have to show that you're actually performing these tasks, right? You have to show proof that yes, it says in our policy that Zavi is going to check backup periodically, or once a week or twice a month. He's going to actually run the backup, do a restore to make sure it's working. And when he does that, he's going to write in the log, I did it, it passed or it failed, and what steps he's going to do after that if it fails, right? So that's kind of where we are. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, and it makes a lot of sense. Especially the one that stuck out to me the most is like the reporting side of things,
Yes.
and is it oversight? Will you call it oversight? Like making sure, because that's another thing I'm thinking. Like you could, I guess somebody like you could come in, assess everything, create a plan or that they need to follow, but who enforces or makes sure that they follow it and they stick to it? Is that something you do, or is that something you leave to the company to do for themselves?
I do that. I do that for companies, but also
Okay.
depending on
Okay.
the structure, the operational side of it, uh, who's in charge of what. Um, I have been in a position where I actually had to be the one responsible for it, or I've
Hmm.
also been in a position to check behind someone else's work.
Hmm.
But the idea is that you want to attach ownership to these tasks, right? Someone has to own, a name has to be beside whatever that is, right? And that person needs to be prepared to answer questions about that. And one of my, a large part of my experience has been in banking, and we would have audits all the time. And as the information security officer for an organization, when auditors would come in, I would be one of those first people they would come to because
Mm.
they are going to want to see all these logs that we talked about, right? They want to know, what's happening with the firewall, what's happening with the employee training, what's happening the
Mm.
last time you got an anomaly on your network. What did you do about that?
Mm.
Um, have you done any tabletop exercises as far as incident response? I want to see all of your plans, right?
Mm.
All of your information security plans, all of your incident response, business continuity, training, whatever standards you have that kind of flow up to those to that policy. We want to see those as well. So
Mm.
yeah, they want to see that you have these things in place, but they want it to be a living, breathing program.
Mm.
Yeah, not something that you did. It looks nice and neat, and you sit over here and it collects dust, and we don't pull it out until the auditors come.
Yeah, I can see how that could be easily, because I'm guessing it's one of those boring things that you just want to do and get rid of. But if it's part of your business and your daily ops, like you say, like a living program, then yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome stuff, man. I could see how that could be very helpful for smaller businesses, because obviously a bank could, I don't know if they're paying for the auditor, but to have somebody come in and audit their system, that's like an extra expense, I would think. But having something, a solution like that for smaller business, that would be
and
something really, really
and
awesome.
also, Robbie, what business owners want to, what you want to remember is what you're trying to do is create a culture.
Mm.
That's all you're trying to do, right? You're trying to create a culture. And if you have a business, and unfortunately, if you have a small business and it hadn't been around that long, you don't have a lot of employees, this is actually a good thing, right? Because you can kind of dictate how things go moving forward. Right? It's going to be a little
Mm.
harder if your business has been around for a while and all these regulations start coming down, and now you're having to change that culture, right? Because we live in a instant kind of environment, right? Everything is instant in a minute, right? And I could see how two-factor authenticating can be annoying, right? I have to, it takes me a while to log on. Why? Um, because you change the culture, right? And that's the whole purpose of it. Uh, it's easier if you tell someone, a new hire coming through the door, this is our process, because that's all they know, right? It's going to be harder for someone that's been there 5 years and say, I know we've done it this way for 5 years, but now I'm going to need you to do 5 extra steps to do this. You're going to get a little pushback on that, and that's
Yeah.
why these programs have to be top down, right?
Mm.
If it's coming from the CEO, that's going to be better received than coming from somebody like me.
That makes a lot of sense. And if the CEO is doing it, then you
Actually
have to
doing it
doubt.
too, and he or she, they're doing it themselves.
That's awesome. Derek, we've come to the end of an awesome, awesome chat. I've really enjoyed this. You've really given us a really good breakdown of the whole security aspect and compliance and governance for smaller businesses. And I always like to wrap up with a final tip. If you could share one, or leave us with one tip regarding this topic, what would be one thing that a founder listening to this should take away from this episode?
Yeah, one thing I would say is think of information security and cybersecurity not so much as technology, right? You want to think of it as a business need, a
Hmm.
business function, right? I think if it's thought more along those lines, then more companies would be in a better position to protect what's important for their company and their business. And also, as your business grows, your cybersecurity and information security program should grow as well. Again, it's that's a living, breathing entity within your organization. So don't think of it so much as technology, but think of it as a cultural shift or a business platform, business entity within your organization.
Love it. Powerful way to wrap up. Derek, this has been an awesome chat. Thank you so much for coming on. What's the best way for our viewers to go learn more about you, possibly work with you? What's the best way for them to
Probably
do
the
that?
best way is through my website. It's going to be securetcllc.com.
And we're gonna leave all of that in the show notes as well. And you're also on LinkedIn as well.
I am.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's Derek Hardmon, LinkedIn. That link for me personally is so long. It's probably better just to do a name.
Just put the name.
Yeah, there's no rivalry. I'm sure there's some reason behind that.
We're gonna leave all the links in the show notes at this video as well, so that you could just under this video, I should say, so you could click on it and go check Derek out on LinkedIn and his website. Once again, Derek, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you so much.